Their lives were bound to silence, to cold, and to duty that never slept. Tonight, let's drift into their story, not with the clash of swords, but as a quiet remembering of why the night's watch was so hard and so lonely. The long road north begins when a door closes behind you. For some, it is a cell door, iron-scraped and sour with damp. For others, it is the wide door of a lord's hall where a sentence has just been spoken. You are not killed, not maimed, not fined into ruin. You are offered the wall. Taking the black, swearing for life to the night's watch sounds simple when said aloud, but it feels like setting down your name and walking away from it. You do not go alone. A recruiter of the watch, be it a quiet brother with a cart or a gray-haired man with a patient horse, gathers a small mismatched company from villages, jails, and roadsides. Chains sometimes bite at the first miles, not as cruelty but as caution. They come off when trust proves out. The watch is poor, but it keeps rules, and even rules can be merciful. You learn the first one quickly, keep moving. And so the road gathers you like a river gathers broken reeds, carrying you toward a colder sea. On the King's Road, you climb onto the great stone spine that runs the length of the realm. The King's Road is older than most stories and straighter than most men. Its slabs smoothed by centuries of hoof and wheel. Southlands slide by, hedges full of sparrows, mills turning steadily, hayricks golden against dark barns, and none of it is yours any longer. People glance up when black-cloaked riders pass and look down again swiftly as if the sight were a chill they'd rather not keep. Inns become a measure of time. At some, the keeper will pour ale without comment and set down brown bread and onions. At others, the watch must barter hard for a pallet near the hearth. You grow fond of the little courtesies, the bucket of clean water, the hobcat curling at your boots, the way steam wraps a bowl of stew, because you suspect such softness thins as the miles deepen. Between roofs and hearths, the King's Road gives you its other face, long stretches of wind, open sky, and the steady sound of feet and wheels. Nights on the road are their own kind of school. You learn to shrug into a blanket without losing heat, to keep your back to a log, to wake at the scrape of glove leather. Older brothers of the watch speak little, but they mend packs, share salt, and show by example how to keep your hands from splitting in the cold. Someone recites the oath under his breath, not yet binding it, just letting the words begin to live in his mouth. Through the riverlands and the wetlands, fields thicken into river meadows. The road crosses broad brown waters where barges drift as slow as clouds. You pass the three-way crossing marked by an old inn and a weathered signboard, and then the land begins to change. Willows lean over ditches. The air grows damp enough to taste. You enter the neck, the realm's narrow waste, where bogs breathe mist and the earth forgets how to be firm. The King's Road lifts itself on causeways, and you move like a quiet procession over green-brown stillness. Insects find the seams of your sleeves. Reeds click together, and somewhere out in the pale distance a frog offers the same note again and again. Sometimes a low ruin rises from the mire, broken stone like molars in a giant's jaw, and an old brother names it, then lets the name fall like a pebble back into the hush. At a fortress that is more memory than wall, you halt to water the horses. Towers list like drunkards. Wind whistles through arrow slits cut for archers who turned to dust long ago. The sight is not grand, but it is persuasive. Everything built by hands can be unbuilt. You step back onto the road with quieter boots, into the north. When you leave the bogs behind, the air changes its mind about what season it is. Pines gather and lift their dark needles in shaggy ranks. Hills roll with heather and stone, and the wind carries the sour sweet of resin. At first you notice the cold as if it were a stranger. Soon it is simply the weather that lives in your lungs. Villages thicken into holdfasts, each with its own stubborn stripe of smoke. Northerners watch you pass with a steadier gaze. Some men nod to the black cloak because their fathers did, and their fathers before them. A boy brings a bundle of kindling to your camp at dusk and will not accept a coin for it. His father takes the coin and presses it back, saying the watch stands so others may sleep. You keep the coin anyway, and the lesson lodges truer than the money ever could. The miles between stone and pine teach a different patience. Days are longer not by the sun, but by the way the light seems to linger on rock and bark. You walk beside men who were strangers a fortnight ago and can now be recognized by cough, by footfall, by the way they tie a knot. The road parts you from the world, but it gives you this, a map of other people's rhythms. Winter fell on the horizon. One gray morning, the smell of wood smoke sharpens into something steadier, and a curve in the land yields towers and walls. Winterfell sits in its bowl of hot springs and old stone, and even at a distance it looks like a thought made permanent. You do not stop inside its walls unless business demands it. The watch has little business with great keeps, but you skirt close enough to feel the heat in the air and to understand why men claim the castle never truly freezes. Seeing Winterfell is like catching sight of a lamp deep in a forest. It means you are in the north proper, where memory runs long and words travel slowly. It also means this: beyond it the world thins and the sky gets taller and there are fewer places to be young. You move on. The road north of Winterfell grows quieter, its inns more far apart, its milestones more coated with lichen. Snow appears not as storm but as rumor. First a dusting in the ditch, then a stripe on a shadowed slope, then a crust that crunches beneath a boot and does not melt by noon. The gift explained and crossed. South of the wall lies a long band of land once granted to feed and fund the watch. People call it the gift, and then farther yet, the new gift. 2 layers of promise laid down in different centuries. The names feel warm in the mouth, but the farms are mostly cold. Stone fences stand, but fields lie fallow. Barns sag, their doors swinging to the wind's slow hand. An older brother explains it once without complaint. The watch was stronger when harvests here were regular and garrons grazed in numbers. Wars and winters shook that strength loose. Men found leagues farther south more forgiving. And the gift, meant as support, became a reminder instead of what was owed, of what was lost, of what a cold can do when it lasts too long. You nod, because there is nothing to add, and because the sound the wind makes in empty rafters speaks for itself. Yet even emptiness teaches. You learn how to see old plow lines beneath the bracken, how to read a roof by its sag, how to judge whether a well is sweet by the way moss grows on its stones. The gift passes under your feet like the slowest of rivers, and with it passes the last pretense that this journey is temporary. Molestown and the last warm door. Near the end of the road stands Molestown, a low place with more earth beneath it than wood above. The town is half dug, its warrens tucked under turf and timber, and smoke leaks from slopes like breath. Here the watch finds the final spice of ordinary life, murmur of voices, the clink of a mug, heat that comes from more than firewood alone. You are fed. Your boots are re-heeled if coin can be found or a favor earned. A barber trims hair with quick hands. Someone speaks your name the way you once said it yourself, and for a brief, unsteady moment you are only a traveler in need of sleep. When you leave before dawn, frost crackling underfoot, the town's few lamps look back at you like watchful eyes. Beyond Molestown there are no more towns, not really, only the idea of them lingering in the lay of the land. The road lifts, and so does your breath in the thin morning. First sight of the wall. It begins as a pale line along the edge of the world. Clouds stack above it in quiet ranks, and your mind insists it is weather. But the line holds as the miles fall away, and it rises clean, impossible, and near. The wall is not only high, it is tall in time, gathering winter upon winter into a single unbroken cliff. Horses grow small as ants beside it. Sound changes. Voices flatten as if the air itself has learned to press words down. The light that bounces from the ice feels old, even when the sun is new. Men who have spoken all the way from the neck to here fall quiet and walk as if inside a prayer. You could call it beautiful, but that would be a southerner's word for it. Up close the wall is work and warning in equal measure. Its face blue as deep water, its surface veined with 1,000 seasons. Its height a number that stops being a number and becomes a feeling. Castle Black and the threshold. Castle Black clings to the southern foot of that vast white, a scatter of timbers and stone, smoke rising from chimneys that never truly go dark. It is not a castle in the southern sense. No walls facing the wall, no high lord's tower, no banners snapping with pride. It is a workyard with sleeping places and a kitchen bold enough to meet the cold. It looks like what it is, a place built to help men stand in one direction for a very long time. You ride in under a gate that feels too modest for the thing it serves. A steward takes names, and a quill scratches them into a book that will outlast every hand in the yard. A rangy dog noses your glove. Somewhere hammers stitch iron to wood, and farther off you hear the rasp of steel against stone as a blade learns patience. The smells here are the smells of simple continuance: tallow, smoke, leather, oats. There are rituals and they are practical. You trade clothes that know one life for clothes that expect another. A brother shows you the steps carved into the ice and the way to climb them without losing your lungs. You are given a place to sleep and a place to stand. No one hurries you and no one wastes you. The pace here is all gravity, the quiet reckoning. The road ends but not the traveling. At night, when you lie under a roof that seems to tick with cold, you feel the south move inside you, arranging itself into memories you can keep. A mother's face, a river bend, the shine of oil on a captain's boots. They float up and settle like ash after a fire. You do not push them away. You let them cool in you until they stop smoking. In the yard, you square shoulders with men who were once thieves, once heirs, once hungry, once cruel, and who are now the same thing you are becoming. The training master corrects your grip without malice. The cook ladles thicker stew after a hard morning. A raven watches the world with a patient bead of an eye. You start to understand the truth of the place. It is not built out of towers, but out of held habits. When the vows come, you will speak them where the sky can hear you, beneath the heart tree or under the open stars, and the words will feel both light and heavy at once. But that is a near future thing. For now you hold this. The long road north has done what it promised. It has carried you to the edge of the world and set you down where duty begins. And in that hush between journeys, you learn the lesson the road meant to teach. Leaving is not only a loss, sometimes it is the shape a new life takes when it first learns to stand. Oaths in the cold, the words themselves. The oath is short, which is part of its power. It does not argue or persuade. It simply states a road you will now walk until the end. Most brothers remember the first line forever because it feels like a door shutting softly behind them. Night gathers and now my watch begins. The rest follows with steady, plain promises that do not raise their voice yet reshape a life. The phrasing is practical. No wife, no children, no lands or titles, no crowns, no glory. You will live and die at your post. Then the litany of images, sword in the darkness, watcher on the walls, shield for the realms of men. The oath does not try to be beautiful, it tries to be clear. That clarity is what settles in the chest and stays there, where you speak it. Most take their vows under the open sky because vows need a witness larger than men. Some choose the God's wood beyond the wall where a heart tree waits, a white-barked weirwood with blood-red leaves and a face carved long ago. In the old faith, a heart tree is where the land itself listens. Standing there, the cold feels older, the silence more precise, as if memory has weight. Others swear before a sept if a septon is present, a priest of the faith of the seven. And candles throw warm circles on stone while the wind noses at the door. Both settings are simple and solemn. The place matters less than the listening. Whether the old gods in their leaves or the seven from their niches, the point is the same. You say the words where you cannot pretend they are only for today. A vow, like breath in winter, shows itself in the air and then goes inward where it must keep you alive. The moment of saying, before the words there is waiting. A steward finds a quill and records your name in the book. The ink a thin black seam that joins you to all who came before. A brother explains the lines one last time, not to convince you but to keep confusion from stealing anything that cannot be returned. The wind moves along your sleeves and your hands learn how still they can be. Then you speak, not loud, but steady. The older brothers around you do not prompt or correct. They listen. When your voice touches the lines about family, no wife, no children, you may feel something tilt as if the ground acknowledged the cost. The line about all the nights to come asks you to look further than you ever have. You do. It is like looking off a cliff and realizing the drop is not into darkness, but into duty. What the oath takes. The oath takes choices first. It closes the doors of 1,000 ordinary futures. A house with your name on it, a child with your smile, a field that remembers your hands. It does not say those things were never for you. It says simply that they will now be for someone else. A clean loss can still feel like a wound. It also takes your private seasons. Life elsewhere moves in cycles. Spring planting, autumn harvest, wedding feasts, first snow songs. On the wall, the year is measured by resupply wagons and the thickness of the stew. The oath removes you from the soft calendar of the world and puts you on the narrow clock of watch bells and patrol routes. dawn, noon, dusk, midnight, over and over until the meaning of each hour is the work it holds. What the oath gives. The oath gives you a name you cannot lose. Brother, it is not sentimental, it is a working word like axe or gate. You can be careless with it and still sleep indoors. You can be careful with it and find it turns into something warmer than the fires in the mess hall. It is strange how a borrowed word becomes a home. It gives you a place in a story larger than any single lord's banner. You are one stone in a long wall of stones. If that sounds small, live with it a while. Small things endure wind better than large ones. The oath gives you the right to stand and the duty to keep standing. For some men, that is the first right and the first duty they have ever held. Law and the line you cross. In the realm's eyes, the oath is a border. Crimes are set down when the black is taken, the past loosens its grip. What is unforgivable below might be forgiven here so long as you hold to your post. But this mercy has a shape. Walk away after swearing and the sentence comes back sharpened. Desertion is a word spoken softly, but its answer is hard. Everyone knows it. No one lingers on it. This is why the moment matters. Once spoken, the oath makes you legible. People who would not share a table in the South will share a wall with you here. Lords send grain because they must, and also because they remember. The old promise between the watch and the realm is part law, part habit, part hope. Assignments after the words. When the echoes fade, life resumes. A lord commander or his officers place you in one of the orders. Rangers for the long paths and the open dark. Builders for timber and stone and the art of making cold hold its shape. Stewards for everything that keeps a place alive when the wind would have it otherwise. The choosing can surprise you. A quick blade might be sent to the kitchens. A quiet boy might be trained with the maps. It is less about glory than fit. The oath made you a brother. The posting makes you useful. Useful is the highest praise the watch has time to give. You learn it slowly, at first as a hum in the background of chores and drills. Later it becomes a rhythm you match your steps to. The quiet after. That first night many cannot sleep. The barracks creak. Somewhere a kettle sighs. A raven thumps along a beam and settles its wings. You stare up at the dark and repeat the opening line because it steadies the mind. Night gathers and now my watch begins. The words fit differently now. They have your breath in them. In the morning nothing dramatic happens. You are handed a task and the day begins to use you. The oath does not make the work lighter, but it makes it simpler. You do the next thing and the thing after that. The simple stack becomes a day. The days become a seam of time you can run your fingers along without catching. Memory and permission. Taking the black does not forbid remembering. The oath restricts what you may hold, not what you may carry inside. A line of trees along a river. A laugh in a courtyard. A name you will not speak because love changes shape here. Memory is not a loophole. It is a quiet permission to remain human even while standing guard for those who will never know your face. Sometimes on the steps cut in the wall, you see far past the gift, past the faint pencil line of the King's Road, into a weather so long away it feels like a story about someone else. You do not reach for it. You let it pass through you like sunlight through thin ice. You are not healed by this exactly, you are steadied. A vow is not the end of wanting, it is the beginning of choosing the same thing again and again on ordinary days. Why the cold matters. Cold is not only a hardship, it is part of the vow's shape. Cold keeps you honest about the scale of things. It enters every seam you forgot to mend. It finds each excuse you might have made and shortens it. Work must be done or frost will remind you why. In this way, the weather becomes a tutor that never tires, teaching you the difference between wishing and keeping. The cold also carries sound. When a voice speaks the oath under the heart tree, even the smallest words travel. The wall, for all its mass, listens. The ice holds the memory of breath and promise. That is a fanciful thought, and men here try not to be fanciful. But on certain mornings, when the sky is the palest blue, you feel it. The place has learned what it was built for. The weight, worn in. Weeks pass. The words stop feeling like a helm too large for your head. They seat themselves. You stop tripping on them in your mind and begin walking with them steady and unremarkable as you carry wood, stand watch, or track a line of prints along a tree line. You do not look for grand meaning as often. You look for a broken hinge, a thinning boot sole, a brother's tired shoulders, and you set about mending what you can. Someone new arrives, eyes wide at the wall's height, lips clumsy around the lines you once stumbled over. You stand in the circle and listen for him like others listened for you. when he reaches the last sentence, pledging life and honor for this night and all the nights to come. You feel it land, not as a blow, not as a trumpet, as a stone set carefully into a wall, tapping once as it finds its place. And the work goes on. Hunger and hard work, what the pot offers. Hunger at the wall rarely roars. It lingers. Most days the pot holds barley, onions, and whatever meat can be had. Salt pork if the barrels are kind. Stringy mutton if a flock wandered close. Rabbit if a snare did its quiet job. The stew is thick after a resupply. Thin when ravens bring bad weather. Bread comes hard enough to wrap a knuckle on. You soften it in broth and call that comfort. The taste is not the point. Heat is. A bowl that steams in cold air becomes a promise you can hold. Men eat standing near the hearth. Boots thawing, breath ghosting, speaking little while the spoon finds the bottom. When the pot is scraped clean, no one complains. The silence is not resentment. It is thrift learned in the bones, stretching the larder. Stewards count sacks like a priest counts beads. Barley, oats, onions, carrots that keep if buried right. Wheels of cheese wrapped in wax. Hunters bring in what the trees will spare. When the stores must stretch, the stew takes more water and asks for patience. When a wagon arrives from the south, the cook's ladle grows generous, and the hall remembers what full feels like. Hunger sharpens judgment. A man who steals from the larder steals warmth from the hour before dawn. So the rules are simple and widely kept. The cook trades crusts for labor, heels of cheese for extra woodcut, and a second ladle for the man who stood the midnight bell. In this way, food becomes a map of duty, work that warms. The wall teaches that work is heat. You chop wood because fires go out and because the swing of an axe lights the body from within. You haul water because iron needs quenching and men need washing, and because the bucket handles bite in a way that keeps fingers honest. You shovel snow from steps cut into the ice, and the breath you spend returns as a brief, clear warmth in your chest. Every chore is a small wall against the great one. Hay must be forked for the garrons. Stalls must be mucked so hooves keep their health. Peat bricks must be stacked where wind won't steal them. None of it is glorious. All of it is necessary. The yard. Training is a kind of hunger too. The empty place where skill should be. Blunted swords bruise, not bleed, but they tell the truth. You learn that a good stance is steadier than a quick temper, that a shield lifted early is better than a curse offered late. The old sergeant wastes no words. His craft is repetition, and in time it fits the body like a second coat. Bows speak when the wind allows, their strings singing a dry note. Some men find they can read distance by the way a target sits in the eye. Others learn to love the spear for its plain honesty. You are not forged into a hero here. You are sanded into someone who will not break at the first hard hour, keeping the wall standing. Builders live in a world of measures. They patch palisades that the wind worries nightly. They tar ropes so the great winch will lift the cage that crawls the wall's face, ferrying men and sacks and courage. They plane new treads for the long, icy stair and set them like careful teeth. The cold makes wood stubborn. Iron grows brittle if slighted. The builders coax both with quiet hands. When ice calves from the wall in a thunder that shakes breath from lungs, they do not stare. They mark the fracture lines, listen to the echoes, and decide where to set the next brace. Their craft is the difference between a place and a ruin. Hands, tools, and small repairs. Hard work is a calendar written on skin. Knuckles split and are sealed with tallow. Nails darken from blows poorly taken. The smell of lye soap, lamp oil, and leather becomes the smell of daily life. Cloaks turn from black to a brownish black under too many suns and snows. You learn to patch with waxed thread by firelight and to keep a needle where it won't be lost. Tools are lent and returned. A good file is worth more than a sharp word. The smith, broad, patient, soot settling on his lashes, tempers edges and tempers, sending you back to the yard with iron that will hold and advice that might. Bells and rotations. Time is kept in simple notes. A bell for the change of watch, another for the meal, another in the small hours when the world feels emptied of noise and filled with listening. You learn to sleep in pieces and wake whole enough. The rotations are fair because they must be. Unfairness erodes faster than ice. On the wall, a man is a length of rope in a longer line. You take your share of the pull, pass it on, and try not to fray. What looks like monotony from the south feels up close like mercy. You know what comes next, and that steadiness helps the mind. Ravens and records. Not all work is brawn. Quills scratch in a cold room where ink tries to thicken. Tallies are made of grain gone out and grain brought in, of arrows counted, of boots issued and later mended. Ravens clack their beaks and shift along rafters, while small, precise hands tie messages to legs and smooth feathers in a motion close to prayer. Letters south ask for salt, wool, lamp wicks, barley, patience. Replies come when weather and politics allow. Even a short note, 3 lines from a distant lord, feels like a candle in a far window. Winter work. Winter adds tasks the other seasons only hint at. Snow weight must be read and relieved before roofs sigh the wrong way. Doors must be kept swinging or they freeze into their frames like thoughts you cannot pry loose. Stores are checked twice as often because a spoiled barrel in deep cold is not a problem. It is a mistake you'll taste for a month. The wind finds every gap a hurried hand would leave. So hands are not hurried. Pegs are seated, lashings doubled, hinges oiled before they protest. Winter is not an enemy here, it is a standard. What the body learns. Hunger teaches pace. A full belly makes for careless work, a half belly sharpens aim. You stop chasing exhaustion as if it were a badge and start bending around it, taking warmth where it is offered, salt when sweat demands it, a sit when knees advise it. The point is not pride, the point is tomorrow's shift. Sleep becomes a craft. You learn to fold yourself into blankets so heat does not escape, to set boots near the fire but not so near that leather cracks, to place a dry pair of socks where the dark will not swallow them. Small prudences bloom into comfort, the quiet economy of care. Hard work would grind men down if not for the soft pieces that appear almost shyly. Someone leaves their last onion on the table with no note. Someone else darns a stranger's glove because their hands needed doing anyway. A joke told once returns on a hard day and earns a second life. Care becomes a currency that spends well. Even the cook, who guards his pot like a captain guards a gate, slides a ladle deeper for the brother just off the midnight step. No speeches explain these things. They simply happen, and in happening, they keep the place human. Why it matters. Hunger managed rightly keeps the mind awake. Work done daily keeps the fear from overgrowing its bed. The wall does not stand because of oaths alone. It stands because wood is chopped, stones are set, letters are tied, boots are dried, and stew is ladled. It stands because men who might be enemies elsewhere become reliable hands here. In the South, people sleep through storms without waking to ask why. Up here, you learn the answer. You are the why. And though the body tires and the belly seldom sings, there is a steadiness in that knowledge that warms from the inside out, like a banked fire that keeps finding ways to last until morning. Brothers in shadow. First nights together. Brotherhood begins before belief. It starts with the sound of strangers breathing in the dark, the scrape of a cot, the thud of a boot set carefully on the floorboard so no one wakes angry. Names are traded like kindling. Small, dry facts that catch quickly and burn out. Where you were from, who you left, what you did or did not do. No one asks too closely at first. Men learn one another by the shape of their quiet rather than the color of their stories. In the watch, the night introduces you before the day decides what to do with you. Morning sorts the room again. Some rise fast, trained by years of labor or fear. Others move like men pulling themselves out of deep water. The early risers offer a joke that does not hurt or a hand to tighten a strap, and the day opens a fraction easier. It is a small mercy to realize that help can be offered without a price. The watch has few coins, it trades more often in steadiness. In a place made of long shadows, the first light is always borrowed from someone else's lamp. The sorting that never ends. The oath says all men are equal in black. Life narrows the gap only so far. Accents cling. Habits betray birthplace, blood, and the kind of hunger a man learned to live with. A sellsword watches doors while he talks. A farm boy counts out loud without meaning to. A lordling holds a spoon like a quill until cold knocks such grace from his fingers. The watch flattens titles, not temperaments. Still, the yard is a teacher that cannot be argued with. A noble grip means little if the shield is low. A thief's quickness does not excuse a slack bowstring. In time, competence replaces pride as the measure men trust. Respect grows in odd soil. Over a repaired latch, a clean cut from the whetstone, a calm voice on a high step. The sorting never truly ends, but it loses its poison. Past lives carried quietly. Some men declare their histories like banners. Most keep theirs folded. A few protect their old names as if a wind might steal them. The watch allows either stance so long as the work is done. At night, when the pace of breath in the barracks settles, stories leak anyway. They arrive in pieces: a father's boots too big, a debt that didn't shrink, a courtroom's echo, a crest sewn once into a cloak and cut free with shaking hands. No one is cured by confession here. There is no absolution, only understanding. A man with a hard past might be gentler with a green recruit. Another, wrong too young, may never learn to trust a laugh. The watch does not fix this. It holds it, the way ice holds stone until spring decides what stays. Hazing, teaching, and the thin line between. In a hard place, roughness travels faster than tenderness. A new brother will be tested, sometimes cruelly. The line between sharpening and cutting is thin. A cruel man calls it making men of boys, as though pain were a whetstone that never chips the blade. A good master-at-arms shifts the balance back, allowing the bruise that teaches but stopping the fist that humiliates. Discipline lives in that narrow path. The lesson becomes plain. A community can be forged from heat, but not from scorn. When a taunt keeps a hand from shaking on the wall, it has earned its keep. When it empties a man of courage, it becomes an enemy. The yard remembers which is which. So do the men who sleep on either side of you. Conflicts that find their own weather. Arguments in the watch blow in like squalls. Quick darkenings of the air, hard words, then quiet again. Pride is tender where life has been rough. Old slights follow men longer than footprints in snow. A man mocked for his fear pulls away on a storm night when another needs him closest. A lord's son given an order in a tone he hates hesitates just long enough to endanger three. Officers know this weather and read it the way a builder reads a roofline. Some settle disputes with work, sending both combatants to dig post holes where the frost will humble them. Others call for words in the armory and refuse to open the door until some better truth is found. The goal is never harmony, it is function. The wall cannot afford anything else. Small mercies, quiet bonds. Brotherhood grows in increments too small to sing about. A glove mended without comment. A place kept close to the fire for a man who stood the high step. Hot water held back in a kettle for a recruit with a cough. Such gestures travel farther than orders. A man hardened by years may still tuck an apple into a pocket not his own and find his shoulders unknot just a little. Laughter is rationed, but it is not banned. Jests are brief and careful, trimmed to the bone so they fit in cold air. The best are given back and forth like a shared blanket, warmed, kept, returned. Nothing cleans a room faster than meanness dressed as wit. Nothing gathers it more than a joke that lets a man breathe without losing face. In the watch, humor isn't decoration, it is equipment. Usefulness as the only rank. There are no bright cloaks here to sort men by. The only rank that matters is usefulness. The steward who can stretch oats to the far side of a late wagon is worth 3 flashy swords. The builder who hears weakness inside a beam by tapping it with 2 fingers saves lives every week of winter. The ranger who reads the faintest story in snow returns with news rather than silence. Men adjust to this market slowly. Some who expected glory find that grease under the nails will have to do. Some who expected scorn discover the quiet dignity of tasks that support without shining. Usefulness spreads authority to corners of the yard that never see a banner. When the bell sounds, men look first to the face that knows what to do, regardless of the cradle that face rose from. The 3 orders and their friction. Rangers, builders, stewards, 3 trades, 3 tempers. Rangers speak in short lines and think in distances. The forest prints itself behind their eyes. Builders weigh everything they say and everything they lift. Their sentences and their scaffolds share the same care. Stewards count, plan, and insist gently until patience becomes policy. Each order can irritate the others the way siblings do. Endless arguments about rope, rations, and routes. The friction is not a flaw, it is a form of strength. A ranger's impatience keeps the watch from growing timid. A builder's caution keeps it from breaking. A steward's persistence keeps it from starving. When a crisis comes, the arguments stop mid-sentence. Hands move as if they were rehearsed. Later, tempers wake and resume their work. The wall stands because each order sees what the others would rather forget. The unwritten rules. Written rules are clear. Theft is punished. Desertion is death. Orders are to be obeyed. The unwritten rules are what keep rooms from freezing over. You do not speak a man's shame for sport. You do not leave a brother alone with his fear on the high step if you can spare an hour. You do not spend a kindness loudly. You accept one without explanation. Another unwritten rule governs grief. Men in black do not make a parade of sorrow, but they do not hide it like contraband either. After a pyre, someone scrubs pots who has no duty to be in the kitchens. Someone else takes the first watch from a man whose eyes are too bright. No ledger records such trades, but the place would not function without them. Nights of listening. Some nights wind has a voice and every man hears a different word. Stories are told then, not to entertain, but to occupy the space fear might claim. A ranger speaks of a white fox that watched him from a ridge and did not run. A builder tells how he learned to set a brace so a roof thanks you rather than resents you. A steward describes the genius of a stew that made 4 onions taste like 8. The same story returns, reshaped by the mouth using it. No one corrects these small edits. Truth here is a tool, not a relic. If a tale steadies a hand, it has done its job. In that way, memory becomes communal property, a blanket passed down the bench. Men who do not fit and how they fit anyway. Some brothers seem mismatched to the wall the way a tiny kid looks wrong for a heavy chest. A soft-spoken boy who cannot bear the yard shouting. An older man whose hands shake too much for a bow. In many places, such men are liabilities. The watch is practical enough to find new locks. The soft voice reads maps aloud at night while others memorize them. The shaky hands fix fletchings with a patience that younger eyes cannot hold. This is not charity. It is efficiency married to mercy. A place that must wring use from every hour cannot afford waste, including the waste of misjudged souls. Over time, the odd fits become the most reliable hinge points of the day. No one says so loudly, everyone knows. When authority fails, no human order is free of flawed bosses. A petty officer can poison 3 rooms with a single hour of small power. He finds fault the way wind finds cracks. He sets men against one another so he need not grow larger himself. Under him even good habits fray. Bread goes stale faster. Laughter thins. The watch survives such winters the way it survives the other kind, with stubborn local goodness. A respected builder refuses to cut corners. A steward keeps the tallies as if the numbers themselves were watching. A ranger brings back meat and gives the first portion to a man the officer hates, without remark. Leadership returns in time or it doesn't. Either way, the place is held by quiet competence that refuses to take the day off. Punishments and the point of them. Discipline keeps the wall from becoming a barrow den of grudges. Punishments are meant to prevent, not parade. A thief finds himself eating last and working first until the lesson lands. A bully is pulled from the yard and set to hauling stones where he can exhaust himself against something that will not bruise. Severity exists. Everyone knows the last name of the word desertion, but spectacle does not. There is a harsh kindness in this restraint. Men are already exiled from their former lives. Making a theater of their failures would strip the little dignity the place can afford. The watch wants function more than it wants drama. Where drama tries to grow, work is sent to graze it down. The way grudges end. Not every grievance is solved by time. Some need an ending. The watch prefers endings that do not cost blood. 2 men set to the same task for a week learn to depend on each other's hands. 2 more are assigned to opposite rotations so their paths do not cross for a month and tempers can starve. In rare cases, transfer between orders changes the weather entirely. When nothing else works, truth is named under supervision, plain as nails on a bench. The naming hurts. It also reduces monsters to measurements. A man can promise not to enter another's dark again and mean it. If he fails, he is moved where his shadow cannot reach. The wall has no patience for vendettas. It already carries enough ghosts, letters, learning, and borrowed eyes. Illiteracy is common. Ignorance is not compulsory. A brother who can read becomes a doorway. He sounds out letters from the south at the slow pace grief demands. He writes replies for men who do not have the words, using theirs anyway. The ravenry becomes a small school, ink thickening in winter, quills trimmed down to honest points. Books live at the fringe of life here, but they live. A map copied by many hands begins to earn the respect of a good axe. A treatise on knots prevents a rope from lying. A history of past winters saves a future life because someone noticed when food was most often short and planned for it. This too is brotherhood, the acceptance that one man's eyes can stand in for another's when weather or years blur the line of sight. Mole's Town and strict kindness. On rare rest days, a few men go to the little warren south of the wall. The trip is supervised, the money is counted, the rules are known. No one pretends such visits are about romance or leisure. They are about reminding the body it is not only a tool. Some return chastened by the sight of ordinary life continuing without them. Others come back quieter, having traded loneliness for the kind of noise that fades by morning. The watch makes no sermons about it beyond the laws already laid down. Strict kindness governs the road in both directions. Men travel in pairs. Time is observed without laxity. If a brother returns wilder than when he left, a gentle hand steers him toward work that will settle him. If he returns sad, the kitchens find him a fuller bowl. The point is not denial, it is proportion. Death, rites, and what follows. Funerals here are brief and exact. Wood is not wasted on flourish. The body is carried, the word said, the fire lit. Men stand watching as if looking were a form of payment owed. They do not turn away before the flame catches. They do not tell each other how to feel. A death is folded into the day like a seam that must hold. Afterward, rooms adjust themselves. A cot is filled by nightfall because it must be. A tool finds a new owner who pretends not to remember whose hand fitted the heft into the handle. A joke returns to service sooner than seems decent, because the silence it would leave is worse. The watch honors the dead practically, by ensuring the living are not hollowed out so much that the wall grows thin. The brother you learn to be. Time in the watch sands men down to their working grain. The loud learn how to leave room for other voices. The quiet find the moment when stepping forward is a duty, not a vanity. The stubborn reframe their pride as endurance. The careless become precise because winter demands it. A man may never change in his center, but he learns to hold that center where it does the most good. This is not self-improvement as the South writes about it. It is craft. You become the brother whose tasks are done before anyone asks, whose jokes are clean and timely, whose temper points outward only when danger does. No one praises you. People simply start handing you things that matter and resting a little easier when you are near. When fear comes in wearing boots. There are days when fear arrives in a clear shape, horn on the wind, tracks where none should be, a cry from the high step. In those moments, the brotherhood tests itself honestly. Men who dislike each other stand shoulder to shoulder without ceremony. A man who talks too much shuts his mouth and watches the tree line. Another who always lingers at the edges steps into the middle like a nail set true. Afterward, relief is plain but restrained. A laugh rolls through the hall in one wave and stops. Bread tastes larger than it is. Someone plays a foolish tune on a pipe that never learned a proper song, and even the harshest officer pretends to hate it. For a few hours, the watch is not only a duty, it is a home that survived another breath. The slow work of trust. Trust here does not bloom. It accumulates like frost. You earn it by being where you said you would be, by lifting what you said you would lift, by returning when the bell says return. Men notice. They do not say so, but they shift their weight in your direction when the platform sways. They ask you to check a knot they have already checked. They let you see the letter they cannot finish. Broken trust is repaired rarely and not by speeches. A man changes his schedule, takes the worst watches for a month, keeps to himself until someone invites him back into the middle. The invitation is the only sign the debt is paid. No one names it. The story moves on and allows him to come along. The odd tenderness of envy. Envy lives in the watch with less poison than elsewhere. A man may wish he had another's calm in the yard or a builder's exact eye, but he knows those gifts keep him alive. Envy becomes something else in such air, a direction to aim, a trait to borrow for a day. The gifted share their skill more easily because praise is practical here. Flattery does not float, it lands as instruction. Thus, a quiet economy of emulation grows. You tie a knot like the man you admire. You portion the stew as fairly as the woman who counts onions like coins. You step onto the high stair hoping to carry yourself with the ease of a ranger whose fear and courage have learned to walk together. In time, such borrowings knit into character. Holidays without holidays. Feasts when they come are modest, an extra candle, a brighter stew, a memory spoken aloud before the mess clears. The South might not recognize these as celebrations. Up here they are. The point is not to pretend life is other than it is. The point is to remark that it continues. Men lift cups and thank the cook, the hunter, the weather. They thank the bell for being only a bell today. After, chores resume without complaint. Banners do not unfurl, songs do not lengthen. The day rises and sets like any other, but it leaves a warmer line in the book of the place. Even long winters accept tiny summers, if you have the will to count them as such. Counsel, given and kept. Advice is offered quietly, or it does not survive. A man tells another to oil his boots before bed. Another suggests shifting a grip 2 fingers inward. A steward recommends breathing through the mouth on the high step so the lungs do not feel insulted. Wisdom here is as humble as the tasks it serves. It travels wrapped in the tone that says, I learned this the hard way and would spare you if I can. The best counsel concerns the heart. Don't carry quarrels onto the wall. Don't starve yourself to impress a man who is not counting your spoonfuls. Don't write a letter on a bad night. Sleep, then decide if the words still belong to you in the morning. These are not laws. They are rails to keep a heavy cart from sliding off into the ditch where bitterness waits. The brother who leaves and the brother who stays. Desertion is the word that changes a room. It arrives as rumor, then as fact, then as work. Search parties, counts taken, the cold arithmetic of absence. Anger has a place, but the place is small. Pity has a place, but it is smaller. What predominates is the stubbornness of those who remain. They close ranks without fanfare. They claim the gap in the chores that fell through it. They refuse to let a hole become a habit. When the deserter is found and law takes its course, the watch does not make a spectacle. It does not teach with terror. It teaches with continuity. The day following such endings looks like any other day, and that is the lesson. The wall will not fall because one man did not love it enough. It will hold because many do. Quietly. Seasons of brotherhood. Brotherhood does not feel the same in every season. In summer, it is labor shared under a high sky and relief found in shade. In autumn, it is the honest counting of sacks and the sharper taste of stew. In winter, it is the habit of placing another's comfort before your own in small ways that let you both survive. In spring, it is the act of repairing what the cold taught you to respect. The rhythm keeps men sane. The mind likes to know what to expect, even if what it expects is not ease. A year at the wall beats in the chest the way a good drum does. Steady enough to march to, varied enough to keep the feet awake. New brothers learn this song. Old brothers carry the tune when storms try to drown it. What makes a brother? Not everyone in black becomes a brother in the truest sense. Some never stop seeing themselves as exiles. Some keep score until the numbers carve them into unkind shapes. Yet even they are caught up by the net the rest weave day after day. Work pulls them along. Habit wraps them. The place insists on its own continuity and uses every hand it is given to secure it. A true brother is not the bravest or the best. He is the one who returns to his post at night and to his better self after a failure. He knows the names of the men on either side of him and the weight of the tasks they prefer to keep. He understands that the point of standing in the dark is not to be seen, but to ensure others never have to look where he is looking. The shadow and the light. The watch lives under a literal shadow cast by a wall of ice and under a figurative one cast by duties few understand. Men in the South imagine glory or horror. The truth is narrower and in its way nobler. The shadow is work, repetitive, underpraised, essential. The light is what shines through it. Competence, mercy, and the stubborn belief that quiet good is still good. As you listen, let the image be simple. A long bench, steam rising from a pot, boots drying, a bell that will call them soon. Men seated shoulder to shoulder, saying little, sharing much. Brothers, yes, but not by sentiment. Brothers by practice, brothers by choice repeated until it becomes a kind of weather that other men sleep through without ever having to name. Oaths in the cold. The oath begins as a whisper in the chest before it ever crosses a man's lips. For days, sometimes weeks, the words move softly under breath while he hauls wood, learns the yard and watches ravens hop along the roofline. He is not yet a brother, but the cadence finds him anyway. Night gathers, says the mind. Night settles, says the air. The idea of pledging for life starts to fit like a season that has finally arrived. The watch keeps ceremony without splendor. When a group is ready, a steward tells them at supper, voice even, as if naming the weather for the morning. Some choose to speak their vows before a heart tree, a pale weirwood whose red leaves stir like a listening ear. Others prefer the open yard or the rookery shadow. A small sept sometimes stands where southern hands raised it, simple and clean in the northern light. The place matters less than the sky, which is always present and always cold enough to steady the voice. Before the vows come the small practical kindnesses that make an ending bearable. boots are relaced, a strip of fur added to a collar, a mug of broth pressed into a shaking hand. A senior brother checks the fit of each new cloak. He makes quiet adjustments, knotting the tie so it sits right at the throat. No one says the word forever, but it sits beside the fire with them, warming its hands like any other guest. When the bowls are empty, the men rise. A heart tree is not simply a tree. It is a white-barked sentinel with carved eyes that bleed sap, sacred to the old gods of the first men. For those who kneel beneath its branches, the vows feel older than language, as if the wood remembers each promise and keeps it in its rings. Farther south, some swear by the seven in a sept, asking the father for judgment and the warrior for strength. At Castle Black, both traditions live quietly side by side, as unremarkable as two coats hanging on the same peg. The oath itself is plain as bread and hard as stone. A man promises his life to a wall of ice and to the brothers who hold it. He renounces marriage, property, ambition, and his family name. He accepts watchfulness as work and winter as companion. The words are not legal argument or poetry. They are a door that closes with the softest possible click. Once it shuts, the handle disappears from one side. Desertion is explained without drama because drama wastes breath in the cold. A man who breaks his vows has broken the one promise that keeps the rest of the realm from sleeping poorly. The penalty is death, but the phrase sits in the mouth like a dull coin, not brandished but held. Most do not need the warning. The weather and the work teach the same lesson over and over, more persuasively than any threat. Those who take the oath come from everywhere. There is the failed heir who could not meet his father's iron gaze. There is the sailor who gambled too well and earned the wrong enemy. There is a boy who stole a loaf and an old man who struck a lord. They stand shoulder to shoulder for the same reason. Once the words are spoken, the past is a country with no road back. The wall makes ease of them not by kindness but by task. The youngest recruits carry hope like an ember inside a mittened hand. They look for friendship in the line of faces and for a role that fits the shape of their strength. The older men carry memory. They have moved through enough seasons to know what years do to plans. When they bow their heads, it is with a clarity that does not need pride to stand upright. Both kinds find a place in the circle. Time will make each resemble the other. Often the vows are taken at night when frost paints the yard in a thin, careful hand. Lanterns swing from hooks, the ravens are quiet, the wall glows faintly under stars. It is a vast, patient bruise of blue. A brother reads the words slowly so that each man can fit his breath into the spaces. The new voices rise and fall together, unsure at first, then steadier, as if they were learning to row the same river. I shall take no wife, the line goes, and the mind sketches a face half remembered. Hold no lands, and a younger self runs a hand over a boyhood fence. Father no children, and something beneath the ribs folds its wings. The next lines are steadier. To stand the night watch, to be the shield that guards the realms of men. It is easier to move toward duty than away from longing, but both must be done, and both must be done aloud. When the last word fades, silence does not rush to fill the gap. It arrives gently, as if it has been waiting nearby and needed only a nod to join them. A senior brother steps forward with black cloaks folded over his arm. He lays one across each set of shoulders and tugs it into place. The cloth is not special. The watch cannot afford special, but the weight is. It presses not like burden, but like a steadying hand. Names change after the oath, though not always in sound. A man is no longer a son of his house or a ward of his town. He becomes only himself, held in a plain ledger and a handful of eyes. Some take to the new naming with relief, as if a mask has finally matched the face beneath. Others find the absence of titles like a cough they cannot quite clear. In time, the work will teach the new name how to fit. Some brothers speak privately to the gods after the ceremony. They stand alone by the ice or among the roots of the heart tree and send a thought the way a man might send a letter without knowing if or when an answer returns. They ask for endurance, for warmth in the fingers, for courage that is quiet and does not need to announce itself. No one remarks on these prayers. Faith, like breath, is not improved by commentary. The history of the oath lies mostly in the way it has refused to change. Kingdoms tilt and topple. Banners fade and are stitched again in new colors. The words stay. Men have argued over many things, whether to fortify old towers, how to trade the few goods the watch can spare, whom to trust with command. They do not argue the promise. It is the beam across the roof. Pull it loose and the room stops being a room at all. There are small variations in where and how the words are spoken, and these are treated as weather rather than law. In deep winter, the vows may be taken inside the armory with the doors barred against the wind. In gentler seasons, a party rides out to a grove where the heart tree leans over a pond. The cadence of the oath matches the place without bending its spine. Always there is sky and always the cold, even if the cold is only in the voice. Not every man arrives ready. There are those who tremble, and those whose faces are carved against feeling, and those who ask to wait a day. The watch allows a breath, not a delay. It is better to take the words when they are clean on the tongue than to chew them into bitterness. A brother may speak them twice if he stumbles, and he will not be mocked. The purpose is clarity, not performance. After the vows, the work changes its flavor. The yard looks the same. The axes bite as they always did. But a man moves differently through the hours. He is no longer a guest of the watch or a debtor repaying a debt in days. He is the debt, the payment, and the ledger all at once. That truth is strange, then bracing, then ordinary. Soon enough, ordinary is what saves a life. Stewards gather the new brothers to explain the shape of their service. The watch keeps 3 orders: rangers who range beyond the wall, builders who keep the structure standing, and stewards who run the lifeblood of the place. The placements are made with an eye to skill and to survival. A quick hand with a quill may mean the rookery. A sure seat in the saddle may draw a man to the long white miles. None of it is punishment and none of it is reward. It is simply a decision about where a life will be put to its best use. Punishments within the watch are meant to heal the wall rather than bruise the man. A thief may scrub pots for a season. A brawler may be set to mending broken fences with the builder's crew. The one offense that cannot be folded back into service is desertion. That has only one answer, and it is given quickly, not because harshness is loved, but because hesitation corrodes trust like rust in a hinge. Even then, the words spoken over a grave are steady and spare. Families learn to grieve without funerals. A mother may hear of her son's oath from a traveler and understand that she will not see him again unless she journeys very far and sees him from a distance. She imagines him cloaked in black on a yard of ice. Some write letters to the Lord Commander, plain lines full of harvest news and weather. The replies are brief and grateful. The watch cannot be family to the realm, but it tries to be courteous to those who gave it sons. In the rookery, the ravens carry more than messages. They embody the discipline the oath asks for. Patient repetition, quick learning, acceptance of weather. A new brother will watch the maester tie a strip of leather to a scaly leg and send a bird into the pale sky. The flight seems delicate, then necessary, then ordinary, much like the vows. A thing so simple you could mistake it for smallness until you stood beneath its shadow. Sometimes the weather chooses the form the oath will take. A storm may chase the men under an arch where snow cannot fall. A wind may strip sound from mouths and force the reader to lean close, speaking into each ear in turn. The adaptation is not a lessening. It is proof that the promise is not a fragile crystal but a tool meant for use. A blade kept oiled, a rope coiled but ready to bear weight. Men remember the moment of speaking as much in their bones as in their minds. They recall where the cloak settled at the back of the neck, the smell of tallow, the way a lantern fluttered just once. They recall the sight of the wall not as a grand vista but as a patch of ice in the corner of the eye that refused to melt. Memory keeps the oath alive, not as a shrine but as a habit. It is a string tied around the wrist that never chafes because it was tied with one's own hand. There are jokes after, and they are careful and kind. A brother will clap another on the shoulder and offer him an onion as if it were a lord's plum. Someone will tell a story about his first winter and how he learned to sleep with his boots near the fire without burning them. Laughter returns to the yard as a small bird hops back to a branch it knows can hold it. No one laughs at the vows themselves. They are not a thing to test for weakness. For some, the line about taking no wife is the hardest. They had imagined a hearth, a shared blanket, the slow miracle of a child's first steps. The watch does not belittle that ache. It answers it with work and with the dignity of being necessary. The world beyond the wall is wide and not kind. Someone must stand where it begins. The oath invites the man to be an answer rather than a question. That exchange hurts and then it steadies. For others, the line about holding no lands cuts deeper. They were born into soil and stone, into a map with their family's name written on it. To release land is to release a measure of identity. The watch cannot give land, but it offers ground all the same. The step where a sentry stands, the stretch of wall a builder tends, the mile a ranger learns so well he can walk it by starlight alone. Place returns, altered but honest. Father, no children may sound like a door locked from the outside, but it also keeps the watch from becoming a clutch of small dynasties at a frozen frontier. It prevents quarrels over inheritance and the tug-of-war of blood. It redirects desire into care that is wider, into a habit of looking after whomever the yard delivers today. The brothers who have been here longest become fathers in the only way the oath allows, by teaching, by listening, by remembering a face when it needs to be remembered. The most quoted lines speak of being the shield and the sword, the watcher on the walls, the fire that burns against the cold. These phrases are often repeated in the mind during lonely hours, not as boast, but as ballast. A man leans his thoughts against them and continues. They are not slogans, they are weight-bearing beams in the architecture of attention. On rare days when the sun shines clear and the air softens, a party may ride out after the ceremony to a ridge from which they can see the wild forest spread like a dark sea. The new brothers look north without speaking. No one pretends the sight is not frightening, but fear that is named can be carried. The oath gives the fear a harness. It makes a draft animal of it and sets it to honest pulling. Command does not stand apart from the promise. The Lord Commander swore the same words and wears a heavier version of the same cloak. When he addresses new brothers, his speech is brief. He thanks them without adornment. He reminds them that they will be seen by no bards and praised by few lords, and that this is not a flaw but a feature of the work. Then he dismisses them to their duties because the wall will not stand on speeches. In the months that follow, anniversaries of the oath arrive like quiet bells. A man may mark them by mending the same glove he wore that night, by standing an extra hour in place of a tired friend, by writing a line in a small private book. The watch has no feast day for vows. It honors them by doing them again tomorrow. Neighbors to the south sometimes misunderstand. They imagine the watch as a romantic order of grim heroes or else as a prison with a prettier name. It is neither. It is a craft guild with winter for an employer and the far north for a workshop. The oath is the apprentice's first true contract. Everything after is the plain dignity of keeping it. Stories reach the yard about brothers who rose to greatness and those who fell to grief. New men learn to listen without drawing moral from rumor. The oath does not promise reward or protection from tragedy. It promises only that a man will not be alone in his task, even in the worst nights feet crunch near your own. A glove brushes your sleeve. The lantern on the next post keeps time with yours. There is a practical mercy hidden in the words. By forbidding inheritance and marriage, the oath removes certain kinds of leverage. A lord cannot threaten a brother's children. A rival cannot dangle land like bait. The vow is a shield not only against monsters in the snow, but against the old clever monsters that travel with coin and parchment. The freedom purchased this way is narrow, but within it a man can stand straighter. On the day after vows, a new brother wakes to the same wind, the same sky, the same list of chores, yet something under the sternum has locked into place. The yard sounds sharper, the steps on the ice feel more honest. The bowl of oats tastes like he earned it by saying a sentence and meaning it. This is how the oath continues to work. Not in a single dramatic stroke, but in the way a whetstone works. A little each day, sharpening what it touches. Evenings bring the closest thing to softness the watch allows. Men sit near the kitchen's heat or lean against a wall that has absorbed the day's sun. Someone recites the shapes of the words under his breath before sleep, like checking door latches in a dark house. Someone else dreams of the heart tree's red leaves and wakes calm. The oath is not a blanket, but it keeps weather out of the mind in the hours when the body must rest. When a brother stumbles, misses a watch, speaks harshly, forgets a step, there is correction, often immediate, rarely unkind. The standard is high because the risk is high. The oath makes it possible to hold one another to that standard without rancor. We have all promised, says the look in the eye. Let us live like men who know what they said. On the rare days a raven brings dire news from the south, a battle lost, a king fallen, a keep burned. The yard absorbs the tidings without splintering. Grief travels in measured lines. The oath is a channel that keeps the water from spilling everywhere. You carry what you can, set down what you cannot, and then shoulder the same cloak you wore yesterday. Duty is not a denial of feeling. It is the rail that keeps feeling from carrying you into the ditch. Winter deepens and the words take on new shades. I am the fire that burns against the cold, changes flavor when the hearth is low and wood scarce. I am the light that brings the dawn means more when day breaks late and gray. The phrases are not magic, but they feel like matches that can still take a spark even after taking on a little damp. You strike them carefully and hold your hands around the small new flame until it steadies. For all its discipline, the watch allows quiet joy. A repaired gate swings true. A ranger returns safe from a long circuit. A builder's new brace takes the groan from an old beam. These moments ring clear. No song is sung, but a grin flashes quick and the stew tastes richer, and for a breath the cold seems like an honest partner rather than an adversary. The oath makes room for that too, because men cannot pull long without knowing why the cart moves at all. Years pass and the words spoken on a single evening become the scaffolding around a lived life. The oath does not shrink with time. It grows to match the shape of the man who keeps it. The brother who once trembled while speaking now teaches others to breathe between phrases. The one who hid from the heart tree's carved gaze now finds it a comfort on bad days. Practice turns promise into posture. If the moment comes when a brother must face the cost of the vow in full, standing a post while his hands ache, or walking out into snow he does not want to meet, he finds that the choice was already made. The speaking was the ceremony. The doing is the life. He tightens his cloak, checks the strap of the lantern, and steps into the work. What began as a string of lines is now a way to place each foot. And when a man's service ends, as all service must, the oath remains in the yard like the sound of a bell after its last stroke. New voices learn it. Old voices rest. The wall stands, which is the only praise the vow ever asked for. The cold continues, which is the only test it ever needed. And somewhere beneath white branches or beneath a bare span of sky, the words are spoken again, steady as breath, simple as bread, lasting as stone. There is a moment some men take for themselves just before the circle forms. They reach into a pocket and touch the last small token of the life behind them. A button from a mother's coat, a bead, a scrap of ribbon, a coin with a hole. Some set the trinket beneath the heart tree's snow, letting the old roots keep a confidence. Others tuck it into a crack in the ice. The token is not a talisman. It is a goodbye said in the quietest possible way. Brothers raised to the seven sometimes feel far from their saints in this spare northern yard. The watch does not make them choose between gods. On certain evenings you can see a man stand where the sept once stood, facing south, and fold his hands as his father taught him. When he speaks the lines about being a light in darkness, he imagines a seven-pointed star. When he finishes, he nods as if to an old friend and goes back to work. The black cloak means many things and nothing at all. It is a piece of cloth chosen because it hides soot and takes dye easily. Yet once it settles on the shoulders, men straighten under its weight. On the wall, it makes you visible to the man on the next post in a storm. That too is meaning. In the days before the vow, some rehearse the cadence alone. They find a quiet corner by the granary or stand on the lee side of a tower where the wind is less sharp. The lines feel awkward at first, like boots not yet broken in. Then rhythm arrives, and with it a gentler breath. By the time they stand with the others, the words no longer scrape. They fit the mouth the way a good glove fits a hand. Snug, capable, warm where it must be warm. Now my watch begins. The phrase is a hinge on which a life swings. Men who once spoke in boasts grow careful with the tongue. Men who gave up easily find they can hold a task through the blue hours before dawn. The sentence does not make saints. It makes men who look out and down, who count torches without thinking, who learn the song of the ice ladder's rungs and climb by it in the dark. There is also the old whisper that the heart tree listens. No one claims to have heard an answer in words, but many will tell you that when they spoke beneath the red leaves, the air itself seemed to lean in. It may be only the kind of mercy a mind offers itself when it stands at a threshold. The watch does not test it. It simply leaves space enough for such feelings to stand and breathe. When the night is at its deepest and the yard is still, the oath can be heard again in smaller forms. A man shares the last heel of bread and says nothing of it. Another takes the coldest section of wall without being asked. A third checks the straps on the mule no one notices. These gestures are the vow translated into a language of muscle and habit. Facing the north, beyond the wall, the land stretches in a long, patient breath. Trees stand in thick-barked ranks, their branches black with rime and stiff as antlers. Snow quiets the ground so completely that you begin to hear your own body, cloth whispering at the elbow, the pulse in your ear, the small, stubborn creak of leather when a strap settles under weight. To patrol there is to move inside a hush that accepts you without welcoming you. It is not hostile. It simply does not notice you at all. The first miles are a rehearsal of the senses. Your eyes learn the grammar of white, powder and crust, drift and cornice, gloss where wind has ironed the surface, gray where shade keeps a memory of yesterday's cloud. Your feet grow patient. They test the snow's promise, then believe it. When the crust breaks, it's a low, resigned sound, and the gap fills with a fine spill of crystals that catch the light like ground glass. Breath rises and is taken by air too cold to keep it. Men learn one another's shapes at the edge of sight. The ranger ahead is a dark stroke against pale, barely moving, then moving again. A lifted hand means stillness. A rotated wrist means right or left. Words are hoarded because a voice travels farther than the mind intends, and because speaking makes the mouth ache when the cold has already claimed so many small territories. The quiet is not a rule, it is a tool. Sometimes the ravens mark the morning before any man does. They drift above the tree line on slow, unhurried wings, turning in the air as if the forest were a thought they are considering from several angles. Their calls carry oddly far, thin and bright and distant, like coins tapping stone in a deep well. You count them without needing to. If there are too many, something is feeding. If there are too few, something has learned to hide even from birds. The wild is not empty. It never was. The free folk call it home and mean it, and a man who pretends otherwise will be corrected by the simplest of facts. A print in the snow where a foot stepped and lifted, the faint, clean cut of a sled's runner, a curl of smoke that threads itself into spruce and disappears. Raids come like weather, sudden on the horizon, then all at once present in the yard where you were mending a hinge an hour ago. Out there you see the before anyone else does, and what you see is not villainy first. It is preparation. The world beyond the wall is a teacher that does not explain itself twice. Tracks are a language, and you read it with the humility of a student who knows the alphabet but not the poetry. An elk herd writes its paragraph in broad, punched ovals. A snowshoe hare traces cursive between saplings. A patrol's own story is told without flourish. Staggered prints where men traded the breaking of trail. Narrow scoops where a sledge runner bit and skittered, a scatter of chaff from a feed bag spilled when a hand was tired. You come to trust this language more than memory. Memory wants comfort. Snow only records. There is the forest, and then there are the places where the forest decides to fall away. Clearings reveal their intentions slowly. A small bowl of wind-kept ground, a long aisle under larches where the needles lie copper and stubborn, a flank of hill where snow hangs like cloth and sulks toward an avalanche. Your eyes learn to name slopes not as beautiful or bleak, but as generous or mean. Generous ground gives you 3 choices, where mean ground gives you 1 and insists that even that will cost you. On good days, meaning not kind but fair, the sky opens into a washed high blue that feels more like absence than color. The sun sits low, a white plate, and does not warm so much as confirm directions. Your cheekbones sting. Your teeth ache if you breathe wrong, but the wind tucks its knives away for a few miles, and the snow squeaks rather than screams, and boots find their rhythm. A man can walk a long way on fairness. On bad days, the world shrinks to the fur margin of your hood. Snow goes sideways and becomes not weather but occupation. Your beard freezes into a salt of ice that cracks if you smile and makes you forget temporarily that you know how to smile. On such days, you live by rope and by rule. Rope ties man to man so that a step too far does not become a chapter too short. Rules say turn back at this hour, at this drift, at this feeling that has no name but is understood in the marrow by men who have stood out here long enough to recognize the weight of a wrong decision before it has fully settled. Sometimes you find the remains of purpose left out like a tool someone meant to return to a shelf, a ring of stones for a fire half buried, the black smear where pitch burned hot and fast, the ribbed ghost of a wicker fence. The watch keeps its myth small out here because large ones attract the kind of hope that breaks at the first true wind. But even the careful men allow themselves 1 or 2 quiet comforts, that the line of the wall exists behind them, and that somewhere to the south a cook is deciding how to make barley interesting again. Free folk sign their presence without apology. A child's handprint where a boy pressed his palm to a drift and laughed at the shape. A plait of hair tied to a branch to show the wind's habit to those who will pass later. An old woman's walking stick, hewn smooth by years, leaned with intent against a stump, as if its owner might return for it after stepping into the trees to answer a call of the body. These are not threats or promises. They are the ordinary lines of a life, and to notice them is to remember that raids are only one expression of need, and that fear can make a man misread a ledger if he does not balance it carefully. Yet fear is not foolish when the tales that make men whisper have, on cold nights, the ring of hammered truth, shapes in the night, wrong in their weight and gait, eyes that burn without warmth, a quiet that feels deliberate like a conversation held in the next room, ending the moment you put your ear to the door. Whether a man believes or does not, he learns that belief is not a necessary condition for caution. The wall was built for a reason. The ice does not need your certainty to hold its line. There are moments when the world permits a kindness. A fox steps into the track you made a mile back and follows it, sparing its own small legs the labor of breaking trail. A stag stands in wind so strong that his antlers hum a note you can feel more than hear, and he blinks at your passing as if considering the inconvenience of you the way you consider the inconvenience of him. On a ridge you catch sunlight laying itself across the crowns of trees like the palm of a large, gentle hand, and the forest holds still as if remembering a name it liked once and might like again. At night, camp is a geometry of small, deliberate choices. The windbreak is placed with the memory of how the last storm turned in the valley. The fire is coaxed rather than built, its light pushed toward the ground so it feeds heat to the men, not to the snow. A pot lives at the edge of the coals, and inside it simple things are made patient by time. Oats forgiving their roughness, a handful of dried mushroom finding back its shape, a sliver of fat lending the lesson it learned in a warmer season. Talk is short, not because there is nothing to say, but because the day has already spoken so much through the legs and back. Sleep out there is not quite sleep. It is a truce between body and cold with the cloak as witness. The man on watch hears everything the others do not, and in hearing it he learns how much the wild holds and how much he can hold for a stretch of hours. A branch unloading snow sounds like a sigh after an argument that ended without victory. A distant crack carries like the clink of a cup on a stone table and means ice shrugging itself into a new idea. A wolf lifts his head and considers the moon and does not sing because the night is too crowded with men, and the decision to keep silent feels like a courtesy you are surprised to receive. When morning comes, the cold has drawn lines on faces where the hood rubbed and left them as if to make a map. Cheek, temple, jaw, a pale geography of endurance. Men loosen the knots they tied with stiff hands the night before and pretend the motion does not hurt, because acknowledging every small ache would make the day longer than it already promises to be. You press yesterday's fire into a new coal with a breath and a patience that refuses to be hurried, and for this the fire rewards you, a small, steady tongue of light that says it is willing if you are. Sometimes the patrol turns, and as it turns, a man reaches instinctively for the thought of the wall, the way a traveler on the sea reaches for the thought of a lighthouse he cannot yet see. The idea is a straightening. It allows the body to remember where the line is. The world grows a frame again. The unknown becomes simply the unfriendly, and the unfriendly is something a man can meet without breaking. And sometimes on the open flats where wind writes words no one can read, a man is swallowed without a sound, not by monsters, not by myth, but by the ordinary treachery of winter. The crust gives, the drift slides, the sky dims with blown snow, and what was a shape ahead becomes not there, too fast for notice to become action. This is why the rope lives around wrists or between harness rings. This is why the count is kept aloud, name to name, like beads thumbed slowly on a cord. It is a way of insisting on presence when the land prefers erasure. There is no triumph in coming home from a circuit that finds nothing. The yard does not cheer. The cook ladles the same stew, but the floorboards speak differently under your boots, and the forge's noise enters the ear like a friend's slow laughter, and the ladder up to the top of the wall looks only as tall as it is, which is tall enough. You log the miles, the sightings, the weather, the sense, always the sense. and you sleep with the old good ache of a task that asked exactly what you could give and then left you with just enough to come back tomorrow and make the same trade. The free folk will come again. They always do. Some will ask passage with their hands open and their children's faces too thin for argument. Some will carry fire and take what they can. The forest does not keep a ledger of justice. It keeps a ledger of survival, and it is written in wet bark and blood heat, and the stubborn will to see one more dawn than the world would prefer to offer. You stand the line not because it will be the last line ever needed, but because this is the line you were given and you have learned the map of it with your feet. What the old tales whisper is not meant to rule your hours, but they sit in the mind like a weight on one corner of a page so the wind does not turn it too quickly. Eyes burning blue, death that does not rest, the feeling of being looked at by something that does not blink in the human way. These are motifs, and men who sneer at motifs are men who have forgotten that patterns are how the world introduces itself before it speaks its name. Believe or doubt as you like. The caution remains the same. The wall was built for a reason, and reasons do not tire. So you face the north as a fact, not a foe. You give it the courtesy of your focus and the economy of your words. When its beauty shows itself, and it does in the pink seam of dawn under a steel sky, in hoarfrost that makes every twig into a cathedral spire, in a river refusing to freeze because it remembers the habit of moving, you do not look away. You let the sight soften the hard place behind your teeth. Then you check the straps, count the men, and go on. And always out there, the silence returns after your passing. Snow heals your print as if it dislikes the idea of a record. Trees lean back into their own conversations. The ravens tip their wings and settle into a dark seam of forest that closes over them like a book shut by a careful hand. You are not the center of the story beyond the wall. You are its margin, written in pencil, kept sharp, ready to be used. A lifetime of duty, the hardest weight is not what the cloak adds to your shoulders. It is what time adds to your name. The oath is for life, and life is not a straight road, but a circle walked slowly until the circle is, at last, a bed. A man does not leave because he is tired or older or forgiven. He does not turn his head because a voice called from the south uses the right name in the right tone. He has consented to belong to the wall the way a stone consents to belong to a tower, by being placed there and by staying. At first the years arrange themselves as an education. You learn the craft of cold and the arithmetic of hunger. You discover that a fire eats more wood than a man expects, and that a wall, even one made of ice, must be tended as if it were a creature with needs and moods. You are posted to the yard and you think it small, then large, then exactly itself. You take your first watch alone and discover the quiet is not empty after all. It is crowded with the kinds of thoughts that do their best work when no one is listening. Seasons teach a steady curriculum. Autumn is a reprieve cut thin. Wind prowls but does not pounce. Wood is stacked with a seriousness that looks like ritual until the first deep cold arrives and reveals it as simple sense. Winter is a long conversation with discomfort that becomes, in the end, a friendship of equals. Spring is not a joyful event, but a loosening, one notch at a time until the world steps out of its stiff clothes and sighs. Summer is the smallest slice and the most dangerous, for it breeds the lie that the harshness was a fever dream and will not return. Men who train through summer without respect for winter's memory find themselves relearning what they should have remembered. Some brothers grow into leadership like boots growing into feet. The work shapes the gate matches the work. Authority here is not a matter of tone or lineage. It is measured in the competence that calms rooms. The best orders sound like observations spoken aloud. The west parapet wants a new brace. We'll leave an hour earlier, the snow is lying. You've had the worst posts twice this week. Take the kitchen door for 2 nights and thaw your hands. A man who can speak like that without being theatrical finds men already moving before the sentence ends. Others endure as if endurance were a craft all its own. They do not rise, but they remain. Faces line, hair frosts. Strength narrows into the necessary. You trust them because they are there over and over where place meets hour. They are the kind of men who know where the extra scrap of leather lives in the sort of knot that gives up without a fight when gloves are numb and patience is shorter than it should be. Not every life must arc. Some can be a reliable cord held through the changes of a song. Time in the watch is not marked by festivals. It is measured by repairs that last or fail, by men who arrive and men who do not return, by the ledger of small mercies and small costs. A new recruit's first good laugh sits in memory beside the winter when the barrels ran low and a stew was made remarkable by the arrival of a single sack of onions. A pair of boots is passed down and then passed again, and the cuts in the sole tell a little history of the places the feet went. When a brother dies, his name is carved where the watch keeps such things, and the work does not pause because he would have disliked that. No matter his past, lordling, plowman, thief, the rest of his years belong to the wall. That belonging is not slavery, it is a choice repeated so many times that it becomes indistinguishable from nature. Men from noble roofs learn to speak without expecting the room to lean toward them. Men from low doors learn to carry authority without flinching at the sound of their own steadiness. The watch does not erase history, but it shelves it. You can visit briefly when something in you needs a story to make sense of a night, and then you close the book and go relieve a post. Duty turns out to be less about heroics than about maintenance. You oil the hinges that will outlast you. You keep a ledger that another hand will read. You watch the sky with the patience of a farmer and the suspicion of a fox. You stack wood in a way that suggests you believe winter will try you again and you mean to be ready to be tried. When the alarm sounds, and there are years when it will not and a handful when it will too often, you discover whether your ordinary labors were a kind of disguised courage. If they were, the extraordinary will feel like more work of the same kind, only faster and louder and with a more persuasive consequence for errors. There are leaders who carry the years as if they were stones that fit well in the hand. They know what to do with them. They throw when throwing is needed. They lay them to make a path when men cannot see where a path might be. They pocket them when keeping counsel is kinder than opening the council fire to every wind. Their faces are not eloquent. Their days are. The mind has its own seasons inside the bodies. Doubt comes like sleet, quick and stinging. It says that the world below has forgotten you, that songs are sung without your verse, that the harvest is richer where the furrows are softer and the frost arrives wearing a kinder expression. Doubt is not treason, it is weather. You shelter from it the same way you shelter from its kin. You stand out of its direct line. You keep your hands busy. You share bread with a man who has nothing to do with the thoughts in your head and who, for that very reason, helps. There is also joy, and you learn to accept it without apologizing for its smallness. A latch slides home with a sound so right it makes the skin of your shoulders loosen. A raven returns in storm and shakes itself on its perch and looks for a moment precisely like someone you'd call a colleague. A boy who came up scowling learns how to set a pot so it finds the heat rather than wasting it, and his scowl becomes a quiet pride that asks for no notice. These moments do not appear in the histories men write when they are trying to sell pages to readers. They belong to a deeper accounting that has no price and therefore cannot be purchased or faked. Years compress oddly into habits. You will start a task and finish it without noticing the middle because the middle has been made familiar by 1,000 repetitions. The body knows how to carry 2 buckets and keep the shoulders kind. The feet know which rung on the ice ladder deserves the respect of a careful step and which rung deserves the confidence of a quick one. The hands know how to lay a cloak so that it warms another man even if you are not there to see him take it up. When age arrives, it does not introduce itself with trumpets. It begins with a single evening when getting up from a low bench is an act that deserves forethought. It continues with a winter when the cold writes its name in your knuckles and refuses to scrub it out. It deepens with a spring when the thaw is too quick for comfort, and you are glad you taught the younger men to read the river when it forgets itself in a hurry. Leadership then becomes a matter of knowing when to remove yourself from where you are no longer the best tool for the job and to take up the roles that ask for memory rather than muscle. Some men leave by falling in the snow and not getting up again. The yard does what the yard must do after. The name is cut, the cloak is folded, the tasks redistribute themselves in a quiet that is not cruel. It is simply the world continuing to ask for what it needs. Other men leave by living until their bodies grow thin and their eyes grow silver and their breath is a thread. They sit near the warmest corner of the kitchen and their advice gets shorter until it is distilled into single words. Now, wait, left, enough. When they go, it is like a lamp being pinched out by a careful finger. You feel the dark more not because the lamp was bright, but because it was steady. The wall remembers them, but the realm rarely does. This is neither tragedy nor injustice. It is the cost written plainly on the contract, and it is paid without resentment by those who have agreed to the terms. You do not wear bitterness like a second cloak. It drags and gets wet and freezes into something that steals heat and movement. You wear instead the knowledge that someone must make the world safe for storytellers to exaggerate, and it might as well be you. If reward comes, it is disguised as an ordinary day that passes without incident because you kept your end of the chain taut and your lantern trimmed and your mouth shut when shutting it was better. If honor comes, it is disguised as the trust of men who do not praise easily. If peace comes, it is disguised as sleep that lands quickly on a body that has done that day precisely enough. A lifetime is a long time to hold a line. The trick, if there is one, is not to hold it alone. You learn to pass your piece of the weight to another pair of hands and to accept it back later without fuss. You learn to forgive yourself the small errors that do not deserve the dignity of being called sins. You learn to atone for the larger ones by working slightly harder and speaking slightly less and teaching before you are asked. You learn that pride is not required to walk upright and that humility is not the same as self-erasure. You learn, in short, to be a brother in the way the word was meant, not in the way it is sometimes thrown around by men who want something without wanting to be changed by the wanting. And when your watch ends, as all watches do, there is no grand noise. There is the snow deciding to fall or not to fall. There is the kitchen deciding the stew needs salt. There is the forge deciding to be stubborn in the afternoon. Someone takes up your tasks because they were never truly yours. They belong to the place, and the place is generous. It allows men to borrow them, to find themselves inside them, to be steadied by their edges. Closing thoughts. To be in the night's watch is to live in shadow, bound to cold hunger, labor, and silence, and to find inside that shadow a clear, unpretending light. You hold the line no one else will hold, not because you are braver than other men, but because someone must stand where the land chooses not to care whether men live or do not. It is a dignity that refuses an audience. The world beyond will forget most names. It cannot help it. Forgetting is one of the ways a busy world continues, but the wall remembers in the way a tool remembers the shape of the hands that used it well. If you listen, you can hear the memory in the scrape of boot over step and the soft thud of a log on an old, patient fire. The sound is not grand. It is simply true. As you drift tonight, let their vigil settle softly. Think of breath rising and becoming the smallest clouds. Think of a lantern cupped against the wind. Think of a man counting name to name across a dark that does not promise to be kind and yet is met anyway with steadiness. Let that steadiness be a blanket. Let it rest on quiet stone like falling snow.